do the presentation a bit like in a bilingual way because I see people in French who speaks French and people who speak in English. Donc bonjour tout le monde. C'est un plaisir de vous recevoir aujourd'hui pour notre 4e présentation. Très brièvement, comme d'habitude, c'est vraiment une présentation qui va durer de 30 à 40 minutes avec une vingtaine de minutes de questions. Hi everyone. As usual, it's going to be like a 30-40 minutes presentation, and we'll have a bilingual Q&A at the end that will be approximately 20 minutes. Before we begin, we would like to thank the Association for Canadian Jewish Studies, the Ferret Jewish Canadian Studies program at the University of Ottawa, the Huron University at Western, the micro program in Jewish Studies at the University of Montreal, and the FAICUM. Today, we are very honored to have as a guest Malki Poryes, a PhD candidate in the Department of Education at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev, that will present the lecture "We Were Not Taught to Think for Ourselves, Haredi Youth Negotiating with Religious Authorities in the Age of Digital Connectivity." Malki, I'll leave you the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Valentina and Alexandra, for this great opportunity to share some of my findings. And thank you, dear audience, for leaving everything behind and come and join us today. And soon, Rifki, a brilliant biotechnology student, will join us, who will, at the end of my presentation, give her perspective on the findings I will present today. Oh, I will share my screen. Thank you. Yeah, just a second. Okay, so my name is Malki, and I'm a doctoral student at the Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. And as you can probably see, I'm also a member of the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community, referring to Haredi population here in Israel, one of a very few female doctoral students in our very traditional and conservative society. My research examines Haredi youth internet use in Israel. I maintain that part of navigating the web, just a second. Part of navigating the web, Haredi youth learn about lifestyles, moral codes, social structures, and fields of knowledge unlike those they were raised to believe that they're the only possibility for them. This creates a tension between the desire to explore more of the new ideas and the need not to risk their and the family's social capital. My findings so far show that most Haredi youth choose not to risk their future in the community, despite the tension that exposure of new ideas may create. After my short presentation, I'm a student, so it's a work in progress. I would very much like to learn from your expertise and hear your thoughts on this research direction, whether from a theoretical perspective or more in generally. So first I will provide you with some background. Haredi society in Israel comprises a diverse range of communities and sub-communities that differ in their level of conservatism, but they share some core characteristics like devout religious beliefs, strict observance of a rigid system of religious laws and practices that govern all areas of life, obedience to the ruling of the senior rabbinic leadership, and separation and differentiation from mainstream secular society. This differentiation includes adhering to a strict dress code and maintaining autonomous educational institutions closely aligned with Haredi values and way of life. Torah study, encompassing the broad range of Jewish sources, particularly legal writing, is a supreme value in Haredi community. Haredi in Israel tend to see general Israel society as permissive, individualistic, and assimilationist, and not Jewish enough. Therefore, they seek to protect their children from its harmful effects. Haredi society does not reject technology. This is an important part for the rest of the presentation. So We claim, and also other researchers, about that they live in modern cities and use technology pragmatically. Haredi community leaders actively negotiate in those days with modern world. Their main challenge is to create a balance between continuing a traditional path that protects the members of the community and carefully selecting the elements of modern technology that may be helpful for the community. To understand the threat or challenge of the internet on the souls of the Haredi youth, we must understand the education worldview of Haredi community. This is because Haredi society places the significant emphasis on education and the importance of instilling values in their children. And therefore, they are primarily concerned with the potential negative effects of the internet, which can be challenging to control and monitor on the values they are trying to instill. So, as we get some background, let's understand a bit more. So, Haredi society considers the souls of its young people to be particularly vulnerable to any external influences. Hence, the Haredi educational system serves the community's Noah's Ark, protecting its young people from the storms of the world outside. Any perceived threat is met with fierce resistance. The young people are the community's most precious asset, are the future keepers of the flame, and thus immense resources are invested in their education. Haredi youth are educated according to a scenario that intentionally limits their choices. For example, I remember my teachers in school saying that it's proven that the smaller your choice will be, then the better choice you will make. So young people are growing in Haredi community have clear boundaries as to what is forbidden or permitted. But studies show that rates of the internet use in Haredi society are steadily rising. While some segments fiercely oppose internet use, others have become willing to adapt its use within boundaries of observant Jewish lifestyle. Despite this development, there remains firm consensus that access to the internet should be strictly forbidden for young people due to the lack of control over its content. Thus, for example, during the COVID lockdowns, remote learning in most Haredi schools was conducted via a regular telephone and not online. But despite all the energy that is invested in keeping young people away from the internet, studies show that the age of the Haredi surface is steadily decreasing. Another important aspect about for the rest of the research is that young people in Haredi society are expected to marry young in the early 20s. And this is at the latest. And this is with an established system of arranged marriage. Consequently, they are very aware of the matchmaking process from a very early age. They understand that any deviation from the straight or narrow may come at the cost of their and the family's capital in the matchmaking market. Thus, young people are very aware that possessing a smartphone or accessing the internet can endanger this vital social capital. The researcher Ayala Fader has studied religious doubt and social changes in digital age. In a recent work about Haredim in Brooklyn, who secretly explore secular world in person or online, while remaining in the Haredi communities. So Fader briefly describes the crisis of disenchantment. Similarly, I'm focusing on the state of disillusionment among Haredi Israeli youth, resulting from what they see on the internet and how they reconcile it with their own lives. However, I want to mention this different. Fader talks about people with families who live a double life. And I'm talking about people who, as far as I know, do not live a double life in terms of lifestyle and faith. They're also not at the point where they are families. So this is also an important point. So that's, just a second. So my research questions are as follows. How do the Haredi youth negotiate the tension between what they see on the internet and their commitment to their communities, institutions, and religious authorities? So let's get to this main part, this methodology. So this is a qualitative research. I have conducted until now 26 interviews out of 50 that are planned with Haredi young people, 13 girls and 13 boys, yeshiva students, aged 18, before they enter the matchmaking process. Here I should also mention, point out 4 different hats I wear this role: as a researcher, but also a member of the community, a mother of 4 adolescents, and also as a teacher working with Haredi young people, teaching in high schools, several high schools. And also, this is the main part, I took inspiration from Flickr and Guta's research and required a young adult guidance committee for this study. The committee comprises 4 young people. Soon, one of them will join us. 2 young women and 2 young men. Those are either over the age of 18. I will soon explain why I'm on the spot of 18. And I'm familiar with the families, with the parents, that I decided in advance not to interview family and friends' children. I meet separately with the girls and boys, and as it befits a society that maintains gender segregation. As part of the principle of collaboration in feminist research, the committee members gave their opinions regarding the interview transcript in advance and from time to time, and their interpretation of the analysis of the findings. As a researcher, I must reflect upon the interview's experiences to avoid judging or criticizing them, and to gain their unique perspective on their lives and their experiences. Indeed, due to the age gap, the committee contributes a lot to clarifying interpretation I cannot see, and also regarding to the 50% of the interviews, the boys that also have the gender gap between the participants and me. The interviews reported that they use the internet for learning, self-discovery, questioning, and sometimes for forbidden subjects, such as issues relating to faith, social location, sexual exploration, and other topics that are taboo in Haredi society. When those young people first go online, they are confronted with an immediate challenge to their worldview. For the first time in their lives, they face almost unlimited choices and options on the internet. The interview also described their reactions to what they saw online, any internal conflicts they experienced as a result, and any disillusions they felt with their current life because of what they saw on their online, and their attempt to reconcile their current values and what they experience on the internet. So just one small comment before we get to the part of the findings. The interviews were held in Hebrew or in Yiddish, and I don't know if kids with that. She helped me in translating and trying to be the most specific with the code. But regarding translating, I think a quote of Nili Mirsky. She was an Israeli editor and also a talented translator from Russian and German into Hebrew. And she said once, translating is like giving a kiss through a headscarf. So I hope I'm gonna be able to give you this perspective. So when I met Eli, one of the interviewees, one of the questions I asked him was if he experienced this dissonance between this content he was exposed to online and the person he portrays in his everyday life as a yeshiva student. He answered that he liked the way he manages both of his worlds. at the same time. However, he did know that in this quotation. I was always told that people in the secular world are not happy. Finding out that this is a lie crushed my worldview. I was always told that people in the secular world are not aware of the truth and are not smart enough to realize that they were wrong. Encountering variant secular philosophies and mindsets online shook me to the ground. I remember that night I read about legal issues, taught law, and it was so complex, so smart. I felt in a crisis. Like they told me, if you know Talmud, you know everything. As a child, you were told if you know you study Torah, the most complex textbook, you will be able to learn everything. Complex physics will be easy for you. Realizing that how wrong I was just broke me because I felt betrayed. They lied to me. It made me think that everything about the community is a lie. This day, I'm fighting this feeling of betrayal. Ellie describes a crisis of disillusionment, feeling that he was lied to undermine his whole worldview. He expresses his anger and those who hold control over and access to knowledge. He blames the leaders, his educators, and nearly everyone for intentionally narrowing his horizons and presenting to him with only a single field of thought. He feels lost and must adjust his perceptions of reality based on this new knowledge, new information he got. Hannah shares a different criticism about the community's rhetoric. I asked her, there is an assumption in Haredi society that says that internet usage negatively affects Haredi youth. Would you agree? And Hannah answered me, I think that the statement is a result of unnecessary panic about the youth in Haredi society. I feel like I get to see the positive side of the internet. The internet does emphasize problems, that already exist in our society. It's like when there is a swamp that dries up and you can see all the snakes that were always there underneath. But it does not create them, unlike what some people like to think because they are happy to find something to blame. Hannah is disillusioned about the rhetoric dealing with modern life. She disagrees with the assumption of the community's leadership that internet is a major source of young people going astray. The image Hannah uses of snakes and swamp is a harsh social criticism. The community blames the internet for no reason. Instead of solving problems, they point to the symptoms. In Hannah's eyes, the internet serves only as a catalyst for society. Her criticism is not trivial. Haredi's children are educated to see Haredi society as exemplary. To criticize the Haredi leadership or the mindset is perceived as a disloyalty. The Hannah criticizes the communal rhetoric regarding the danger of the internet. She's behaving as an autonomous person. She understands that the rhetoric is a stigmatizing mechanism to maintain the social order. This understanding makes her feel disillusioned with her community. Hannah's understanding about the stigma as a tool correlates with Goffman's definition of stigma as a characteristic that reduces value. It turns the object of the stigma from an ordinary person into a person who is stained and does not belong. Goffman uses the terms of passing in his work. He defines it as an action that the person takes to pass into society, meaning to negate the potential of a stigma. In Haredi society, people pass by keeping the internet secret. Yoel, unlike Hannah and Ellie, does not accuse the authorities of hiding knowledge when he describes his disillusionment, but like Hannah, he criticizes the methods like stigmatization that the community uses to keep youth obedient. When I turned 17, I went and got a smartphone. I started to realize that I lived in a bubble my entire life. I felt like I'm coming out of a shell. Little by little, I'm learning about life and trying to build my own future. For the first year and a half since I bought a phone, I hid it both from my family and from the yeshiva. It means the yeshiva staff. I'm turning 19 soon, and I wish not to have the freedom not having to hide my life. But I don't want to disappoint my mother. I have a family responsibility. If my brother's cheder, I mean the school administration, knew about my phone, my brother would get kicked out. Yoel feels disillusioned. He wants his autonomy, but he also understands the price he and his family might pay for his autonomy. He knows he must manage the risk properly. In government terms, Yoel passes. He presents himself and performs like a disciplined member of the community, so as not to endanger his and his family's value and status in community. In conclusion, the picture that emerges from the interviews is a complex one. Haredi youth respond in various ways to the exploration of the internet. Some find the revelation painful, and some others are disillusioned. It remains to see how many of these young people are so disillusioned that they may leave the community. I plan to revisit participants in 2 years from the first interview and see what is their status at that point. At first glance, it seems that many may resolve the tension by continuing to pass within Haredi society. One method that most of them use to resolve the tension is online communities, where they discuss their issues with the religious authorities' actions, but this is for a different talk or maybe for the Q&A part. And I would like to argue that this is not a zero-sum game. They somehow managed to reconcile both their newfound information and their contribution with the Haredi society. Continuation. This is not just a conflict that ends once they get older or they get married. It's an ongoing conflict where you don't necessarily give up your freedom for the sake of the community, and you don't give up your place in the community for your free choice. Let's see if Rifki joined us. I see she's not here yet. I wanted Rifki to give her perspective on the findings. I would just want to find out where she is. Maybe she doesn't have the right link. Just a second. I just wanted her to give her perspective and see and tell us how she sees the challenges and the gaps, what we don't manage with in our meetings with this young guidance committee. Let's see. I'm just checking up where she is. Thank you for being patient with it. Just a second.
Malki, maybe while you contact her and while we wait for her, she's coming, you can tell us a little bit more about the committee, because I think that it's for the topic of our interconnection series. It's extremely interesting how you build up this tool and how it works, how you choose. You spoke a little bit, but to tell us a little bit more in detail, and also why you asked this particular person to join, and then if she'll join the conversation, would be great. And if not, we can just go on that. It's totally fine.
Yeah. So I found out if she joins us just in time.
So maybe you can stop sharing the screen so I can put you both in conversation. Great.
Yeah.
Great.
As I told you, she's a brilliant biotechnology student. She's really familiar with my research. Rifki?
Yeah.
Hello. Good evening.
Welcome.
To you. Hello. So I introduced you. She's my bestie friend from a young age daughter. So for sure I couldn't interview her. but I gained a really good, brilliant brain to help me to think and to join this committee, this young committee. And I want to hear your, as a member, your part, your role in the guidance committee, and provide some feedback, maybe some critics about my findings, and your opinion about the success of community or the lack of success, and maybe something needs to be improved, but this is our topic at this moment.
We're talking about it right now. Okay, so
yeah,
I think what like caught me, really caught my eye is like when I went through all the interviews you made, it was like I felt like you understood where we're coming from. Like a lot of times I read about people are writing about like the religious community and they're not actually a part of it. So a lot of times they're missing a lot of nuance. And when I read it, I felt like it's somebody that knows what's going on, like somebody that is there, that experienced it, that knows what it's on about. And I think like what was really important is like focus on about the youth, which is like the future of the community. Like whatever it is now, it's going to be the face of the future of that community. So whatever we see now, that's the future. And it was like interesting to see, like you're talking about the comedy, like you're talking about everybody. So it was interesting to see that everybody had like a unique experience, but also it was there has been a lot of similarity. So like a lot of the experience were very like common. And I was like, okay, I've experienced it as well. Like the type of hiding stuff in the community and so I think like everybody went through the same stuff, but also in some unique way. So it was interesting to hear a lot of people, and now you're not the only one there. So it was like interesting to see that perspective.
Can you tell more about how you see this committee, how you see this combination, and especially I think our part is about this disillusionment. I would say that once I met Rifki and I told her, excuse me, they don't stop complaining, those young people. I see them really passive in a way. And then she opened my eyes. This was I can tell the crossroad in my research. She told me, no, they have these young people have this online communities where we do discuss, where we do get this, where we do discuss the rhetoric, where we do discuss what's going on, and all our anger and all those tactics to survive and to be careful and how to manage and reconcile both worlds. So thank you again, Rifki, for this brilliant perspective and point of view. And anything has to be changed, anything to be mentioned, maybe?
I think it was like amazing to read everything. I think what is amazing is you actually brought like young people to talk, because a lot of times they feel like, it's a waste of time. So they do tend to like just build stuff for themselves and just not interfere in like trying to solve problems. They're trying to create something for themselves alone outside the community. So it was interesting to see like where this could go.
I think what's interesting about the community, I haven't mentioned, maybe I should emphasize it, that they come from an absolute point of view. They were brought up in an absolute point of view, but they don't throw away everything, but they are careful. They do pick and choose. They are careful and not give up. They don't give up everything at this, in one go. They just try to create, to try to see what's suitable to them and actively create a balance that suits them at the moment. And this careful part in them brought me to understand and researching the establishment of a Generation Z in Haredi community in Israel, which I talk about not demographically, but sociological-wise. The COVID-19 and many things went on in the community. And that's why I can see them as a generation, the way they experienced. They were born in the early 21st century. But the Haredi went through many differences, many things, from bashing the internet completely until adjusting and getting the internet for work and for essential use, any essential use. So they experienced those changes to terms. And so, as I told you, I interviewed them at 18 and then meet them again at the age of 20. And I hopefully at the age of 22 and see what changes or what they kept the same. So thank you again for listening. Thank you again, Rifki, for those highlighting the best points ever. And thank you again, dear audience. I would be very happy to hear your thoughts and responses. And you know, I've heard once, I would like to know whose words they are. The research is for the formalized curiosity. It's about digging, but with a purpose. So thank you again for joining us today. And we're here for the Q&A part.